Hello, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and the project I'm sharing today in my Mother's Day card series is a double Z fold card that creates a really fun, pretty floral extravaganza for the person who receives it. So I'm using two stamp sets. I'm using the Hero Arts Marianne's Flowers on the left, and then Altenew's Henna Elements that you saw there on the right, along with some jet black archival ink. And I will be stamping this various stamps from the set onto some Bristol Smooth cardstock because I am going to be coloring these images with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers and water. And Bristol Smooth cardstock is my favorite paper for using my Zigs, and I can't endorse it enough. If you have had any problems working with your Zigs, getting your Zigs to blend well, please try the Bristol because it will change your life. But anyway, I did want to point out that these two stamp sets have different line weights, so they look a little strange potentially together. The Altenew stamps are much thicker than the Marianne's Flowers stamps. So something to bear in mind with that kind of thing is that you want to mix up the line weights together to make it look like you did it intentionally, so that it will make it look like the stamps go together better in the final version. And you'll see me do that. Now, I did have a few areas that didn't stamp so well, so I used my Copic liner to kind of go over those and outline them a bit. And now I'm going to be coloring these with some, as I mentioned, my Zigs. And I'm using water. It's not in the water brush. I use a water brush with it, but I'm just dipping the water brush into my little cup of water there. This isn't really going to be a coloring tutorial, so if you want to see more in-depth coloring videos on Zigs, I have several of those. I think I even have a playlist, so you could check out some of those. But I will take you through some of how I am coloring. So I have a couple different ways that I color with Zigs. The leaves would be the first one, which is just use one color and water to create shading. So you just add it to like where the shading is going to be the darkest, like which is going to be towards the flowers, like under where the leaves meet the flowers, and then take water and just pull the color out away from that to fill in the leaf. So that becomes a natural shading. Like the most of the color stays where you drew it originally, and then the water kind of waters it down and makes it go lighter as it goes away from the shaded area. Hopefully that makes sense. Then, of course, you can also use multiple colors to add shading, and I do that on a lot of the larger flowers, like especially this red one in this project. Now, first I'm starting out here with my lightest shade of red, and I'm basically going to base coat the entire flower just to get a good layer of red down initially. And then I will wind up going back with that same marker to add shading where it's necessary, and also add additional darker shades of red to add more shading to that as well. So here you can see I'm using the same marker, but I'm darkening down the lower petals on the flower to make them look like they are further away from you, sort of a shading rule of thumb. Sorry about my cell phone. But then, especially with the darker flowers, like the red flowers and then the orange lilies, I use probably 3 different shades of red, orange, even a little bit of yellow here and there to create variations in shading and really get it the way I want it. But like I said, this isn't really going to be a coloring tutorial. It's much more about how to construct this card. So if you want to see me really color a lot of fun things and how I shade things, please check out my Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers playlist for more in-depth look at that. Now I'm going to show a fair amount of coloring here. Like here I'm doing the pink with just that first thing that I showed with the leaves, where I'm just basically taking the same color and pulling it out with my water brush. And I will do that a few times. And then eventually with these flowers, I do add some purple, like a very red purple, just to the shaded portions to really get some nice depth going on these flowers. The lily is quite a bit more complicated, and it was a little bit difficult to try to get the orange color that I really wanted. So I tried out Obviously quite a bit of orange, and then I added red, and then I added some yellow until I finally got it to exactly where I wanted it. I will also additionally color those stamped leaves that I stamped in green ink. I'm going to color over those a little bit just to give them a little more dimension and interest, because they looked a little flat being just stamped, in a straight color. And I will be using 4 or 5 different shades of green to color my various leaves to get some variation in the leaf color, because they're not all going to be the same on the different flowers. So here you can see again, I'm using a darker orange to add different orange to the lilies, and darker red to my red flower because it's looking a little crazy, and on and on. But if you're interested in the specific zig colors that I use on each flower, I will list that on the blog post. And so the blog post, along with the supply list, is linked in the video description below the video on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to head on over there to see the specific colors that I use for each of these flowers if you want to produce something, reproduce it exactly as I did. So you can see I'm adding, again, coloring these smaller pink flowers the same way I colored the larger pink flowers. And then I've got that larger yellow flower. I did want to kind of have a cross section of sort of pink, yellow, and red were kind of my main focuses for the color palette. And I used a gray cardstock as my backdrop to really make the colors pop. I did that very intentionally, as you will see when we get into the structure of the card. So now I'm just going to skip ahead to the greeting, which is from the Happy, Happy, Happy stamp set from Lawn Fawn. It's my go-to for Mother's Day because it's the only Mother's Day greeting I have, but it's awesome and it's got a lot of variation. And I am going to heat emboss this in gold embossing powder. So I am stamping Happy, and then later I will stamp Mother's Day using Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink, onto, this is some Nina Solar White cardstock. And then I'm going to coat it in gold embossing powder and then heat set it with my heat gun and a clothespin, which is my tip if you have a small piece that you need to heat emboss so you don't burn yourself. And here is my gray cardstock for the structure of the card. So the card is 4 1/4 inches wide by 11 inches long. And then you're going to score it in half at the 5 1/2 inch mark. And then you're going to score that left section in half again at 2 3/4 inches. And that's basically the rule of thumb for any Z-fold card. It's you're going to, whatever length you have, you score it in the middle, and then you score the left side again in the middle. So the first fold goes behind, so it becomes a mountain fold, and then the middle fold goes towards you, so it's a valley fold. And that's how you get your Z shape on the first card. Now the strip, which is 1 inch wide by 11 inches long, is the double Z fold. And you're going to score it exactly the same way. So at 5 1/2, and then at 2 3/4 inches, and then you're going to fold it the opposite way. So the 5 1/2 inch fold goes away from you, the 2 3/4 fold goes towards you, and so it's an opposite configuration from the gray piece, as you can see there. Now, how to adhere this down is you're going to use, I use double-sided tape. I think that's the easiest way to do it. You're going to adhere just the two shortish ends of the yellow piece. So how I do this is I fold it down over the long side, and then you're only putting adhesive onto the 2 3/4 portion, not across the entire 5 inch width of the straight edge. And then you're going to peel off the backing from that. It's the longer piece, so it's actually 5 1/2 inches wide, but you're only going to adhere it across that 2 3/4 section of the front of the gray card. And so just like there, because you don't want the rest of it to stick to the inside of the card. That's why you only put adhesive on that 2 3/4 part. And then on the shorter fold at the end, you put adhesive on that and then just adhere it down to the inside of the larger piece on the gray card, and that is the structure of the card, and you can sort of see the Z foldy action. Now you are going to need a piece of pattern paper for the very front panel, and that is cut to 4 inches by 2 1/2 inches to give it like an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. And I'm adhering that down with my ATG gun, and then here's my greeting that I'm putting in the middle, just right across the middle. And then here are a bunch of my little pieces that I have die cut out or fussy cut out. And then I have this little ladybug that I cut out of some cardstock using the Elizabeth Craft Designs Ladybugs dies. I just thought I needed a cute little bug of some kind, and I wanted something red to tie in with my red flowers that I've already drawn for the rest of the bouquet. Now I added a little detailing to my flowers because I can't help myself, so I have some Spectrum Noir sparkle marker as well as some glossy accents and some Nuvo glitter drops on the various pieces. This is glossy accents. I used some sherbet shimmer on those little pink flowers. That's Crafter's Companion Spectrum Noir sparkle marker. And then I'm going to add some sparkle marker here to my dots on my ladybug, because can you really have enough sparkle? I don't think you can. Especially on like a Mother's Day card. I mean, come on, you got to have some sparkle on that. So now I'm just going to adhere down the flowers here that I've decided are going to go on the front. And I'm using a combination of double-sided adhesive tape and my Zig 2A glue pen to adhere these down. So I have various widths of adhesive tape. So that's like a 3mm right there. So very skinny. And then 6mm and 10mm. And then the Zig pen works really well too. And I also don't put adhesive like all the way across the whole thing. I purposely only put adhesive in the centers of flowers when I'm adhering them down for cards like this, because what happens is you wind up with some dimension kind of all on its own by the edges not being adhered down. They kind of like, they will flip up or have a little bit of shadow under them. And it's a nice effect, and it's super easy to do. Now I decided not to use that second little pink flower, but I'm going to put my lily right in the middle of my yellow strip here in the front. Something to remember is that the flower that you put on the front of this yellow piece is going to be the front of your bouquet, and it is going to be on top of everything else that you place on the back portion here. So now this is the rest of my crazy floral bouquet that I'm putting together on the back panel. So you see how it's going to collapse down on top of it. So you want to bear that in mind and kind of check it as you're going to make sure that it all looks good as you're kind of assembling it. Now I'm purposely using different sizes, different colors, various leaf shapes to keep it visually interesting, and also to mix up those line weights that I talked about in the first part. And you can see I've kind of got the pink on two areas to keep it visually interesting. And now I've adhered all that down with my double-sided adhesive tape and my zigs. And this is the really tricky part. This center panel is where you're going to see the backs of the flowers. So I'm using repositionable adhesive to initially see how I want to arrange this. Because when you collapse it down, you're going to see the backs of those flowers behind the lily, as you can see there. So you see quite a bit of white. And, you know, some white isn't bad, but I didn't want a huge amount of white. So I'm kind of trying to push them together, make them a little bit closer, set together, so that you don't see a whole lot of this grouping. Most of it is covered up by the lily. However, not all of it is. There are still some pieces that are sticking out. So a way to kind of disguise that is to coat the back in a green shade. So I cut matching dies out of 2 shades of Gina K designed green cardstock. That's grass green. And then the other one is apple mint. And adhere it to the back of your flower. So then when the whole card is closed, you're really seeing more green than white. And again, I didn't mind having a little bit of white, but it kind of disguises those pieces that are sticking out. The green really does a nice job with that. So I will wind up adhering these down again with my zig and some double-sided adhesive tape. Now I added a few more little extras here and there to just kind of finish it off. And that is really the completed project. And you can see how it makes a really nice, beautiful bouquet when it's folded, but it also looks really good when you keep it open. And you can write a message on the inside of that gray piece, or I'm going to do it on the back because the back of my cardstock is white, or you could add a white piece to the back as well. And that's the completed project. And you can see a little bit of the detailing on a few of the areas and get a little bit of a feel for the coloring. So hopefully I've given you a little inspiration on how to make a really fun and fairly really spectacular, if I do say so myself, a floral Mother's Day double Z fold card. It's actually really easy to put together. The hardest part of the whole thing was coloring and cutting out the flowers, I swear. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I'd love it. I also love to get comments, love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? You need to subscribe right now. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Here are 2 more videos from my Mother's Day card series. And as always, there is a supply list linked in the video description below and over on my blog. Thanks so much. Have a great day.